Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Is that any better? I messed with my audio settings yesterday because I was on a Discord call. There we go. I think we're back to normal. What's going on, everybody? You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. This is your host, Critical Failure. A bit of a weird episode this week. I tried to... jeez, how can I put this? A lot of system issues, but that's okay because we've got a lot of really great content as well. Kaiser checks in with an audio comment, but more specifically, he gives us his first impressions breakdown of the RG35xx from Ambernick. So I'm looking forward to that. Chiptunes, I don't have access to any of the assets I had been using up to this point, so we're gonna do some. Well, it'll be Chiptune Wildcard Week. All that and more. This first track is called Bittersweet Coffee. It's from Takuka Ninja from the Hot Coffee Chiptune compilation, which is free on Bandcamp. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. More when we come back. Back again in the studio. We've got an old-fashioned van cast the way we used to do here on the air. Let's go there now. We are in the van. It has been a good bit since we've done a van cast, but here we are. It is 8... oh, you know what? Drop the air conditioning down just a wee bit. It is 8:24 p.m. We got 66 degrees outside. It's a beautiful evening here in Southern Maryland. We are headed out to get some takeout. It's date night for me and my wife, but we can't go anywhere just because that's how the chips fell. So kids are down for the evening. I'm going to go get some takeout. We're going to watch some movies in my office. It's going to be a really good time. Anyway, the thing that I had on the docket for today's trial was Mega Man 8, which is something that's been, last couple weeks, I've been kicking around the idea of getting out the Mega Man Legacy Collection Volume 2, checking it out. And I loaded up Mega Man 8, and I can't say, at this point, I can't say that I've given it a full honest try, because I'm going to be honest. What I did was I made sure the program ran, and I didn't have a gamepad, you know, in an accessible place at the time. So I played it for like 5-10 minutes with a keyboard. And when you're playing a Mega Man game, you're not playing with a keyboard. That's just not how it works. But I don't know, man. My first impressions, my initial reactions from checking it out, I feel like a lot of for lack of a better word, soul or charm of those old games, I feel like is lost when they made the jump to PlayStation. At least prior to turning 3D. I think it's a fully 2D game. And I look at the sprite work, and the sprite work looks good. It's a decent looking game. But the original Mega Man games, I think, those games didn't just look good. They looked like they were better than the system could really do, I think, looking back. Those Mega Man games, I mean, they pushed... Talk about pushing hardware to a limit. I didn't know until I was much older that the reason Mega Man was blue was because of palette limitations. So, yeah, you push it to this more robust visual medium, and I think a little something is lost. And now that in and of itself is does not make it a bad game per se. But that's something I noticed within like first couple minutes of trying. And I also remember like there was a video that was really popular years ago from Ego Raptor called Sequelitis. You guys remember this video? And he was talking about the later Mega Man games and using them as an excuse, or not an excuse, but he was using them as an example of the wrong way to feed information to the players. Mega Man, make sure you press answer to the dash. That kind of thing. And the reason this comes to mind is because even in the 4 minutes it took me to try Mega Man 8 for the first time, it seized control more than once, at least twice. Big sigh. But, you know, I still want to go back and give it a real try. Gamepad hooked up, ready to go. We're talking bare minimum 30 minutes, you know. I played through the I played the prelude, you know, up until I think it was the first mini boss, and it was like a robotic anthill mountain type thing. And I was shooting this thing from every direction, and I figured out how to dash underneath of it to the other side. But from what I could tell, there was no visible weak point, so I was not able to actually do damage. And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm playing this with a keyboard. This is clearly reaching like puzzle game territory. It's like, it doesn't matter how good you can jump and dash and shoot. You got to know the trick to beating this one boss. I was like, in my initial just quick check to make sure it worked, that's where I check out. So I'm hoping that when I attack it with a controller, I'll have a little bit more, you know, freedom. It'll feel a little bit more comfortable to try things, and I'll be able to figure out the weakness on my own without having to consult the internet or a wiki or something. On the other hand, when it comes to Mega Man, I don't think it's necessarily unfair to check the wikis for information, because some of the older games, particularly Mega Man 3, comes to mind. Playing through Mega Man 3, there are some ridiculously hard enemies where if you know the weapon to use, it's like one shot, boom, boom, super easy. I was like, oh, wow. If you know what you're doing, this isn't as incredibly unbalanced as it looks. It's just, you're supposed to use trial and error to figure out which weapon to use. And that's a big part of, you know, which one of these stages should I play first. So I don't know where the line is. I would definitely want to try all the stages before I consulted any wiki. But yeah, I don't know. I think the too long didn't read version of all of this is wasn't super impressed with the game, but it was only a cursory glance. I have yet to dig in and sink my teeth in. It's entirely possible for me to give this game the full try and then realize, oh man, I was completely wrong. This game's awesome. In fact, I would go as far as to say that would be the optimal scenario. I would love to be wrong. And yeah, you know, we'll see how it works out. Hang on. Oh yeah, I guess four-way stops don't work that way anymore. Okay. This is me trying not to road rage on the air. All right, hang on a second. We're driving around super self-entitled people. We're driving doodly 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 doo. Please don't hit me. All right, I think we're good. That's my impression of Mega Man 8. The package that I got it in is still, even if it turns out that Mega Man 8 is a big turkey, which I don't think is going to be the case. I didn't get the impression that it was a turkey. I just wasn't, I wasn't jazzed, that's all. But even if I don't click with that game, Mega Man Legends Volume 2 has Mega Man 9 in it and 10, and both of those games were awesome. The reason I pushed to get a Wii back when it was a new and exciting console was because it had Mega Man 9 on it. And Mega Man 9 was, oh man, you talk about a game that was a big deal. Mega Man 9 was a big deal. That was the first Mega Man game, in many, many years, and it looked and smelled and tasted like the NES in all the best ways. So I'm glad to have that one in my collection. All right, I'm at the first stop. Let's see, I'm going to go in and get some bubble tea. And after these messages, we'll be right back. All right, first stop is down. And I think, boys and girls, I think that wraps it up for the Vancast. We talked a little bit about Mega Man and where I stand with that. I sat down to play Dynasty Warriors 2, and come to find out, when I play it on an emulator on my computer, it just can't quite handle it. So I was experiencing a bunch of slowdown and stuff. Oh well, that's alright. Same thing happens when I run it on the RG35xx, which is, understandable, because even before I pulled the trigger on the 505, what I was told was it can run a handful of PS2 games, but don't buy it as a PS2 device. So that's fair. But what that boils down to is, if I'm going to play Dynasty Warriors right now, got to play it on the hardware authentically. I don't really have another solution. Oh dear. And I looked at the Dynasty. There's a handful of Dynasty Warriors games that are available on Steam, but they're all pretty expensive. And it just so happens right now that the Koei company, Koei Tecmo, whatever, they have a sale going on Steam, a pretty minor sale for Koei games, and not all of them either. So the ones that I really, really want, like the Nobunaga's Ambition games and Romance of the Three Kingdoms, not really any of those so much. But even with the sale, you're talking big money. So that series, which I just discovered and really dug, is stuck on the PS2 for me. All right, and I'm at my second stop, so I'm going to get some Chinese food. I'll see you guys back in the studio. Okay, back again in the studio. So I want to tell you exactly what's going on here on TCR. I took the old hard drives from the old machine because they had historical data on it that I didn't want to lose. They had a lot of episodes of TCR that would have just gone up in smoke. They had accounts, things like that. And I put those hard drives into the new computer to access that data. Now, what I wasn't expecting was that Windows took the old installation of Windows and the new one and merged them together. So it looks like my old desktop, which is okay. So I tried going into the BIOS and selecting the old hard drive as the boot sequence. Didn't work. I'm still getting the same thing. And a lot of things aren't working. So this isn't going to work long term. But I do have access to all the old historical data. So I'm making sure the TCR archive gets backed up. I'm making sure I have a lot of CME projects that were just hanging. I'm making sure all that stuff gets backed up, and I'm going to do a complete hard drive wipe probably in a couple days. This episode, it puts me in a weird spot because a lot of the assets that were generated over the last month or two, I don't have access to. I don't have access to the top 40. I don't have access to the transition sound effects I had been using for the past couple of weeks to try and make the podcast flow a little better. All that is just, I don't know, it's just gone. So we'll wipe it and try again. But that's okay. In the meantime, like I mentioned at the top of the show, Kaiser did send in an audio comment, which is great because we haven't heard from Kaiser in a long time. But also, Kaiser bought a handheld that I don't have, and I think he does a really good analysis. Let's take a listen.
Hi there, TCR. It's the annoying, repugnant hunk of an Australian man here, also known as Retro Kaiser, and, well, you wanted an audio comment. You've got one. And, well, sadly, I do not have much to say other than hello. Actually, that's not true. You're talking about the RG35xx before on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I ended up getting one based on your recommendation. And you people over at the Discord wanted to know my thoughts on this little device. And all I have to say is, I like it. I like the screen being in the 4:5 ratio, and because it cuts out the annoying bars, giving me more to focus on, giving a bit more of an authentic experience as well. Don't get me wrong, the Retroid Pocket is great. It is a fantastic system, but I need something else. I need something as an alternative, something for that original aspect ratio. So it is that. I also like the control scheme. I like how it's in the classic Game Boy style, although the triggers at the back of the controller are a little bit difficult to get used to, especially for when it comes to fighting games, like trying to pull off Akuma's ultra special attack, the one where he raises his knee like he's going to do a massive fart, grabs you, and farts you to death. I'm pretty sure that's not what happens in the special move, but let's go with it. So it's difficult to pull that off. So the controls are... it depends on the game. Although for RPGs and Super Nintendo games, and for most PlayStation games, that is not a problem. It's just certain genres that it affects it with. The thing I really do like is the performance. It just runs a lot of games quite well, which is the basic of what I wanted from the system. And it has a good backwards compatibility too, going from like some of the pre-NES consoles like Atari, ColecoVision, all the way up to the PS1, but everything beyond that is a bit, well, let's just say it caps off at PS1. Although, while I'm loving this console, it is not perfect by any means. If you want to get a really good experience for it, you really need to install a custom firmware update to it. I mean, the original is okay, but it's just really basic. And by adding a custom firmware, you're able to add RetroArch to it, therefore being able to emulate a few more systems. Although, the one thing that annoys me is I got this for the purpose of retro achievement testing, because I am into making retro achievement sets now, and having a little device away from the computer is a great way to test to see if my achievements are working or not. And I can't really test that with this system. Well, not yet at least, because there's no way of hooking up Wi-Fi. Well, not with the model that I have to it. Although I have seen custom firmware updates that are being worked on that are adding that. Granted, you do need a little Wi-Fi adapter in order to enjoy the full experience, but there is a custom firmware in the works that's adding like more RetroArch features to it, such as retro achievements and of course the Wi-Fi. I am looking forward to that. I've seen footage of it. It is... looks like it's still got a ways to go before I would install it onto my system. So overall, the RG35xx, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's not perfect, but with the custom firmwares that are being made for it, it's going to be someday. I mean, if you don't care about like the retro achievement stuff or whatnot, then this system is perfect for your needs, because it runs games. It runs several lifetimes worth of games on it, which is more than enough for most players. It's just missing that one little niche that I really love about these consoles, but it's a niche that's being worked on, being put into a custom firmware update, so yeah. Anyway, this has been Retro Kaiser. It's awesome listening to your show, man. I've been listening to it for the past... fucking hell, has it nearly been 15 years already? Shit. Well, feel free to bleep that, by the way. Sorry for swearing, but it's been a really long time, and I'm out of things to say. Other than, I'm not dead. So, I'm sorry to the 1 to 2 people listening to the show that, well, never mind. This has been Captain James T. Kaiser. Thank you, Sia. Thank you for having me on your show. It's been a pleasure. Bye, guys.
Big thanks to Kaiser for checking in, man. It's good to hear from you. Gotta say, sounds like a nice little machine you got there. If you like the 4:3 aspect ratio, I would recommend the RG35xx. The only problem is that you have to use a dongle for Wi-Fi. So there's that. But it looks good, feels good. It does a lot of what you're talking about. How do you feel? You like the vertical, the vertical form factor? Because I like it as well. A lot of the higher end machines don't use it, which kind of sucks. But I was a Game Boy guy growing up. My older brother had a Game Boy that I constantly wanted to play and never was able to. I finally got a Game Boy of my own once they weren't cool anymore. You know, people forget that there was a period where Game Boy and old Nintendo and all that stuff was not cool, right? That was when I got all my stuff. Yeah, so now when I buy my handhelds, the ones I like the most are the ones that feel that way. All right, we are 22 minutes in. This is the part of the show where I like to thank the sponsors. These are gentlemen who give of their resources to make sure TCR can come back every single week, and they're enormously patient with technical issues like the ones we're facing right now. So as an old tradition, I like to read their names off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen. They are Hemrock, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and of course EmeraldRangers.com. One of the things that went up in smoke in this hardware issue I'm having, the video editor I use to produce the YouTube version is not loading. It says there's license issues, so I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. The YouTube version might be late this week, so yeah, you can still catch us on EmeraldRangers.com. And for those of you who supported, I hope you're enjoying the party. All right, let's see what else we got here. This track's called At the Core from Markland Cadet. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. More when we come back. Boys and girls, studio. The clock's a ticking on this one, so even though we're only 20 minutes in, we're going to go ahead and shift gears and do the rest of the fail bag. So let's start by going to EmeraldRangers.com. Bear with me. This past week, we've got rewriting the Dragon Ball Z movies to fit the canon. We've got at Tiger Club Radio 449, Discovering Dynasty Warriors. That was last week. And there's nothing in the hole there. So let's shift gears. Oh, that reminds me about the box. Yes, let's talk a little bit about Dynasty Warriors. I played Dynasty Warriors 5, and I gotta say, it's more detailed than the Dynasty Warriors 2, but I can tell that the focus was on making more enemies on the screen at once, and as a consequence, in order to make that work, they made each enemy weaker. Game feels a little easier, doesn't feel quite as dangerous as number 2, but it's still a lot of fun. I ordered Dynasty Warriors 4 because it was like $5 or something, and that came in the mail yesterday, but I haven't had the chance to play it. So since there's not much else I can say about Dynasty Warriors that I didn't say last week already, let's take a peek in the box and see what we're going to do next week. Okay, I think this one's going to be very similar, and I think it's going to be the last one like this. And it is Extreme Legends Samurai Warriors for the PlayStation 2, which I got disc only for $9. Sweet looking disc. Looking forward to playing it. I'll touch base with you next week and let you know how it goes. That said, let's move over to, let's see. I don't think we have anything on the server. Let's see. Let's go to the Failbag channel over on Discord. Tabletop Gaming, Play by Email Gaming, RPG Maker, and Tiger Claw Radio /Failbag. Okay. This one's from the 9th. Was that from this past week? Yeah, this is from Tuesday. So this was new this past week. A few things for the Failbag. Number 1, great to hear from Dorabka. I hope you and your leg are feeling better. Number 2, how's Final Fantasy II treating you? I played it twice. Final Fantasy II, I've been playing it on the Nintendo, the English translated NES ROM. So the version that I'm playing has the same thing where if you focus all of your attacks on a single monster, after the monster dies, all of the attacks that come afterwards are wasted. And I hated that about the first game. So that alone tells me that I'm not going to get very far. But apart from that, I've enjoyed looking around a little bit. I'm getting used to the whole GURPS skill system, where it's instead of leveling, the skills individually level, which I don't like on paper. But when you're playing it, what happens is you see more and more. You see those levels up. You get those dopamine receptors because you keep seeing the bling bling of each individual skill leveling up. You see advancement more often. So yeah, I haven't made it too far apart from that, but I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to beat it, but I'm just test driving it until the next instance in your series comes out. So he says, can we get an IPS version of Zelda Randomizer uploaded? I would like to use it on my trusty Retron 5. Yes, I'm terribly sorry it's taking so long. Been having hardware issues across the board, but that's something I should be able to do on my cheap laptop if I can find enough quiet to do it. Number 4, in recent days I've been using my limited game time to play my old copy of Activision Anthology for the PS2. It's one of my favorite compilations. Very well done collection of Atari 2600 games. I'm a huge fan of in-game awards and compilations. In this anthology, you can unlock the Activision patches based on your high score, just like people did back in the 80s by sending their Polaroids of their high scores. So far, I've got patches for Chopper Command and Spider Fighter. They also include a nice selection of 80s pop music that you can play in the background. Totally rad. Quick note on that. The only game I have played where I surpassed the patch threshold is Pitfall. And it was a lot of years ago. I had like one amazing game where I blasted through the whatever the threshold is that they set forth in the manual, to the point where I made a photocopy of that page in the manual and I pasted it. I printed it out and pasted it in my high score book, and I wrote, dated it. So if that were still a thing whenever I did that, I probably got that score like 2014 or so. I would be a proud owner of that patch. But let's get back to the question. Do you have any favorite Atari 2600 games? Oh boy. Do I ever? Hang on. You know what? I haven't actually played the Atari 2600 with the exception of like the rare emulation jump dip, you know, in a while. But I have, for those of you who aren't aware, I've got a fairly decent Atari 2600 collection. Let me pop it open and take a look here. There we go. Hurt my hip getting this thing out. Wow, I got games in here that I forgot I bought. Skateboarding, which is a game I always played the ROM of. Looks like I did eventually get a hold of a copy of it. Circus Atari. I wish my paddle worked so I could play Circus Atari. You wouldn't think because it's the simple name, but fun little game. Star Raiders is a favorite of mine. I really liked... on the Atari 2600, space flight games were popular, or at least they made a lot of them, because they were, you know, there didn't have to be a lot on the screen at once. You could make them really primitive, and they would still be fun to play. Star Raiders is one that they tried to make a little bit more complex. It's got the fancy controller that you have to play it. That's a good one. Let's see. I liked the M Network games. I have several of those. Frogs and Flies is a great game. Man, wow. I gotta hook up my Atari 2600. Clackety clack, clackety clack. Lock and Chase. That's a great game. Lock and Chase was a game I liked for the Intellivision. And I got a hold of the M Network cartridge for Atari 2600, and it's pretty good. Intellivision version is better, and it's fitting because the whole M Network games being like converted Intellivision cartridges. Those are the ones where you see them, they look like these other cartridges, and they have a little adapter on the bottom, because that's exactly what they are. Yeah, here's one for you. This is one worth looking up. Dark Cavern. That is an awesome game. Another M Network game. Top-down shoot-'em-up action. What else is in here? I liked Spider Droid. That was a fun little game. But I found out later it was like a cheap remake of another game that did it better. And I can't remember the other game's name. But the other game is the one that everybody knows. Let's see. I've got... Oh, yeah. I think this is the other game. Amadar. Which is a Parker Brothers cartridge. That's a great game. Where's the one I got from Hugh? I have one in here that I got from Hugh Johnson from back in the... Yeah, here we go. The Empire Strikes Back, which I got from Hugh Johnson during the Retro League run. I think, Hemrock, while you were still on, I did something on the forums, and he was like, I'll send this game to whoever. And I was like, me. So he sent it, and it had a it had like a Post-it note stuck to it that said, thanks for supporting the podcast. And that was like a personalized stationary Post-it note that said Hughes Johnson on it. So I kept that Post-it note as the label for the cartridge because it didn't have a label on it. And it stayed on there for years until my kids ripped it off. So now it has... I printed out a label from my label maker that says The Empire Strikes Back, and then in smaller letters it says www.theretroleague.com, which I think, if you look it up now, is gone, because the Retro League's been defunct for several years. But let's try it. Oh my gosh. Keyboard input problems. Retroleague.com. Somebody must have parked this website by now. Yep. The Retroleague.com goes to the Zen Flowchart, the simplest flowchart maker. You know what? I'm not going to lie. That breaks my heart a little bit. It really does. But I was hoping it'd be like an archive or something, but oh well. What I'd really like to do is for Atari 2600, I want to get that Retron machine, and I'm not going to because I'm saving my money for a PC or whatever. And I'm buying, as it is, I've been buying little low cost peripherals here and there. But Retron makes an HD Atari 2600 reproduction console that you can get a paddle for it and everything, and that thing I kind of want because modern paddle, play paddle games, and also it's got a smaller form factor, right? My Atari 2600, I have the Atari 2600 Junior, which is already a smaller machine than the really old ones, but I need a smaller footprint if it's a system I'm actually going to use. And also, the Atari feels like a more appropriate console to have a clone of because there were so many clones back in the day, right? You had like the Coleco Gemini, which was a clone. The rules were different, so people just cloned it and they would call it, hey, super fun arcade machine or whatever. And there you go, it would play Atari 2600 games. So because of that, it feels a little bit more appropriate to have like a Retron kind of thing. But yeah, that was a great single sentence inside your comment, because that got me to pull out my Atari 2600 box and go back in time a couple of years. So let's see, let's go back to the comment and see what else we had. Number 6, in other news, my new PC is fixed. Ultimately, the tech wizards could not figure out how to install Windows on my NVMe drive. However, they did get the OS installed on a 1 terabyte SSD. Overall, I spent more money than I wanted to on the service. However, after thinking about it more, the cost really wasn't that bad, considering they included the 1 terabyte SSD, a fully licensed version of Windows 10 Pro, and a licensed version of Microsoft Office to include Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and more. They also have a really cool 3D Pong machine in their shop that I got to try out. I want to stay positive. You know what? It sounds like you got a halfway decent working machine out of it, and I know it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. Like, you were trying to find a low cost low cost method that you could build yourself, and neither one of those things ended up happening. But you've got a functioning machine out of it, right? So my suggestion, if you really want to stay positive, do something with it. Figure out something new to get into that you use your machine for. Let's re-download Cockatrice and play Magic the Gathering, or maybe get yourself a copy of Famitracker and finally take the plunge and try and make some primitive chiptunes, if for no other reason than just so you can understand more what people go through to make them. Get yourself I know you have RPG Maker. Get those old ancient RPG Makers installed. Let's do a chain game, even if it's just between just you and me. Do something with that new machine, and you'll feel better about it. Because, yes, you spent more than you meant to, but you can make that money worth it. It's just, how much you're going to make that machine work for you. Okay? So that's my bro olive branch advice for you. And thank you very much for checking in on the Failbag channel. It's really good to hear from you, man. It always is. And that said, let's jump ship over to YouTube, and we're going to read off some of the comments from this past week. It's the busiest week on TCR, or at least on the YouTube channel, in a long time. I had something out every weekday, videos that I was proud of. Simple, little, hey, I got this thing. But there was something every week, and I gotta say, I'm really proud of how Tiger Claw TV as a YouTube channel did this past week. So we're gonna pop open the channel, and then we're gonna pop open the studio. How we doing? We're 39 minutes in. That's not too bad. I was afraid this was gonna be like a 15-minute episode. We'll go to comments. Uncheck the ones I haven't responded to, and we're going to go back to last week's TCR. 44 minutes and 25 seconds in, the balls dropped. All right, so what he's talking about is the bit rate. This is running at 44,100 hertz per second, and if I put in a sample that's played at a different bit rate, every time I hit record, I have to remember to change to make an adjustment. Otherwise, it comes out shifted like that. So let me make sure I respond to him in text. That's 44,100 hertz. Is that right? Yep. Please and thanks. Oh, that's another thing, man. The keyboard lag. When I'm typing something, it'll just stop coming out, and it'll wait, and it'll come out at once. And when I'm typing, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But that's been coming through when I play games. So I'm hoping the complete refresh will eradicate that. Mecha Menace writes, if copyright was a thing for classical composers, the little ditties in here might stir the cilia in their ears. I hear a lot of takes on classical compositions. Here's the thing about classical music, Mecha. Most of it, I say most, it's really broad. It's broad and unfair, but remember that there's that public domain threshold of 75 years, as long as we're not talking about Disney. And as long as we're not talking about Disney, and as long as we're not talking about specific recordings, that's another thing that people seem to miss. If the Boston Pops record Beethoven Symphony, doesn't matter how old Beethoven Symphony is, it's still Boston Pops recording from, a couple of years ago or whenever. So if they took the sheet music and they interpreted it, then I think they're good on that. And honestly, I think they just served the game all the better for that reason. Let's see. Got some positive comments from Hemrock on the wizardry thing. Good stuff. Thanks for playing. Hope your thief improves. So here's the thing. That Wizardry 5 save, it actually went up in smoke when I switched, when I put the hard drives in, which sucks because I was enjoying playing that. But that's, unfortunately, unless I start again from scratch, that's as far as that one's going to go. He says, we need more videos with camera on TV. This is a hack. I think this is a hack of the original Sonic and not Sonic 2, for what it's worth. Keep rolling retro. He's talking about Sonic the Lost Land. And you know what? I agree with you. I'm doing way more camera on TV right now because I can film it and produce it entirely from my cell phone. So it's a great way to bridge the gap while I get my computer up and running. Then we had one where the Sonic Repro glitched out pretty bad. Mecha says you got the debug build, and yeah, that could be. Kaiser says, dress error. Sonic's shoes are out of fashion. Panasonic and Knuckles says, refro. Kind of calling me on a mispronunciation. And a gentleman with a name written in Russian says, I think the ROM hack was never properly tested on actual hardware. Crashes are misaligned in memory access, probably. So yeah, I think that's a real answer, which is great. Much appreciated that. And the last one we got was from Tyler Block. He's on my SNES multi-card from AliExpress. He says, I've seen this cartridge on Amazon and was curious about trying it. Love random stuff like this. And all I got to say to that is there were a lot of different cartridges produced with labels almost exactly the same, and the game selection is different in a lot of cases. So again, pay close attention to the game selection. You could get one that looks exactly like this and has the same amount of games and thus the same label, and the game list could be different, even if it's produced by the same people. So that might not necessarily be the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely something to look out for if you see a game in a video and you're like, that's the one I want, and now you're going to go and try and rebuy it. So apart from that, yeah, it's been great. I love my AliExpress multi-cart. It does a great job of sitting on the shelf and not getting played. Up until I shot that video. I played with Knights of the Round on that a few times once I shot that video. We're 44 minutes in. All right, hang on one second here. Well, another episode of Tiger Claw Radio has come to a close. Thanks for hanging out, listening to some chip tunes, and talking some video games. Whatever it is you're dealing with, I hope it goes good for you. Just keep at it. I'm wishing you all the best. I really am. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.